Okay, so today we're going to do a deep dive into something pretty big.
Okay.
It's all this stuff about uh, how the laws are changing
Right.
to try to make things more fair for Black
Yeah,
Americans.
yeah.
Trying to like fix the system and all that.
Huge topic.
Yeah, and we've got a ton of research on this.
Oh, wow.
We've got like legal papers, studies, even some personal stories.
It's interesting how much it feels like things are finally shifting, right? Like we're moving past just talking about the problem
Yeah.
and actually seeing real legal changes happening.
I know, it's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
And you know where they really seem to be focusing? Education.
Oh, absolutely.
Like that's the foundation.
Yeah, it's the key.
They're trying to make sure Black students have a real shot.
Right. And we see that with things like affirmative action,
Yeah.
which is trying to help more Black students get into college.
Right.
But it's not just about college.
Uh-huh.
It's about fixing those huge funding gaps between schools in Black communities compared to wealthier areas.
It's crazy how unequal it is.
It is.
It's like some kids are running a race
Right.
with brand new shoes and a coach,
Yep.
while others are barefoot and have to figure it out themselves.
Yeah, it's just not fair.
Exactly.
And that's what they're trying to fix.
Right.
Make sure every student has what they need to succeed.
Yeah, but it's not just about education.
Oh, of course not.
There's this whole other economic piece, too.
Absolutely.
And all the sources we looked at kept talking about closing the racial wealth gap.
Right.
Like it's this huge problem.
Yeah, and that's tied to things that happened a long time ago.
Oh, like what?
Like redlining.
Redlining.
Yeah, where they literally drew lines on maps and said, okay, these neighborhoods, they're too risky to invest in.
Really?
Yeah, and guess what?
What?
Those were the Black neighborhoods.
Oh, wow.
So Black families couldn't get loans, couldn't buy homes.
So they couldn't build wealth.
Exactly.
That's messed up.
And it still impacts people today.
So what are they doing now to like undo all that damage?
Well, they're trying a bunch of different things.
Okay.
There are these new laws about pay transparency.
Oh, yeah.
So companies can't get away with paying Black employees less for the same work.
Right.
And some places are even banning employers from asking about your salary history.
Oh, interesting.
Because that can just keep the pay gap going.
Makes sense.
But
Yeah.
laws alone aren't enough.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Like, you got to do more, right?
Absolutely.
But what else can they do?
Well, we need to think about things like helping Black entrepreneurs get access to capital. Like, what if there were more venture capital funds specifically for Black-owned businesses?
That's a great idea.
Or programs that give microloans and teach financial skills in Black communities?
Yeah.
Things like that could really make a difference.
It's about giving people the tools they need, right?
Exactly.
Breaking down those barriers that have held them back. And it's not just about race either.
Oh, absolutely not.
It's about all these different identities that people have.
Yeah, and how they overlap. It's called intersectionality.
Intersectionality.
Like, think about a Black woman with a disability.
Right.
She faces discrimination on multiple levels.
Yeah.
It's not just being Black. It's not just being a woman. It's all of those things combined.
And that's what makes it so much harder.
Right. And the laws are starting to catch up to that.
Yeah, I'm seeing that in the research.
Like, they're looking at housing, healthcare, the criminal justice system.
All through this lens of intersectionality.
Exactly.
It's about time,
It is.
Like, we can't just treat these issues separately anymore.
They're all connected.
So with housing,
Yeah.
what are they doing to make sure Black families have fair access?
Well, they're cracking down on discrimination.
Good.
Like those sneaky practices that keep Black families out of certain neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And making sure there are affordable options available.
Okay, that's good.
And then healthcare is a huge one.
Oh, yeah, the sources we looked at were pretty clear.
Yeah.
Black communities often don't get the same quality of care.
Right. So they're trying to fix that by getting more doctors into Black communities.
Okay.
And addressing those underlying social factors.
Yeah, like poverty and stuff.
Exactly. That can impact health.
Uh-huh.
And they're working on the bias that exists in healthcare.
Wow.
How sometimes doctors treat patients differently based on race.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that happened.
But it does.
So it's about making sure everyone has a chance to be healthy.
Right, regardless of their race.
Exactly.
And then there's the criminal justice system.
Ooh, big one.
Yeah, and a lot of the research talked about sentencing reform.
Okay.
And how to address the racism that's led to so many Black people being locked up.
It's a big problem.
It is.
So what are they doing about that?
Well, there's a push to get rid of those mandatory minimum sentences.
For nonviolent offenses.
Yeah, especially for drug offenses, which have really hurt Black communities. And they're looking at alternatives to prison.
Okay.
Like drug treatment programs and community-based stuff.
Yeah.
to help people get back on their feet.
It's about giving people a second chance, right?
Exactly.
Instead of just locking them up and throwing away the key.
Right.
And we know we can't talk about equity without talking about voting.
Absolutely not.
Like, that's the foundation of democracy.
It is, and the sources really stressed how important it is.
Right.
Because changes in voting laws can really hurt Black voters.
Yeah, they gave some pretty disturbing examples,
Like what?
like voter ID laws,
Right.
which can make it harder for people without certain IDs to vote,
Yeah, a lot of those laws disproportionately affect Black voters.
and cutting back on early voting,
Yeah.
which makes it tough for working people to get to the polls.
Exactly.
It's like they're putting up all these roadblocks,
And those roadblocks can really silence entire communities.
and that ties into the whole cultural preservation piece, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if a community can't vote,
Yeah,
they lose their power to protect their own heritage.
that's right.
Like, think about all those efforts to save historic Black landmarks
Right.
or to fund Black museums and art programs.
Yeah,
That all depends on having a voice in government.
absolutely.
So voting rights are crucial.
They are?
They're about making sure Black communities can control their own stories.
Exactly.
And as we move into the future,
Yeah.
we got to think about technology too,
Oh, that's a big one.
because the sources raise some serious red flags about bias.
Yeah, like in facial recognition software.
Right.
Which has been shown to be less accurate with Black faces.
And that can lead to some scary stuff.
It can, like wrongful arrests.
Exactly.
So they're starting to look at regulating those technologies
Ah.
to make sure they're used fairly.
That's good.
And that same idea of fairness is showing up in the corporate world, too.
Yeah, the research talked a lot about corporate responsibility.
Yeah, and the need for diversity and inclusion.
Not just talking about it.
No, actually doing something.
Right, like some companies are tying executive pay to diversity goals.
Wow.
So if they don't hit those goals, they don't get their bonuses.
That's a powerful incentive.
It is.
And others are making everyone do diversity training.
Help people recognize their biases.
Exactly.
It's about realizing that diversity is important.
Yeah.
It's not just a PR stunt.
It's about building a better workplace.
And a better society.
Absolutely.
Wow, so we've covered a lot today.
We have.
Education, economics, healthcare, voting rights, technology, corporate accountability.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
But it all comes back to this idea of equity,
Right.
making sure everyone has a fair shot.
No matter who they are or where they come from.
Exactly. And it's been eye-opening to see all these different approaches.
It's a complex issue,
It is.
but it feels like things are moving in the right direction.
I hope so, but it makes me wonder,
What?
what would a truly equitable society actually look like?
That's a good question.
And what can we each do to help make that happen?
Yeah, it's on all of us.
Well, that's something for you to think about.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
And keep those brains working, folks.
Keep learning.
There's a lot more to explore,
There is.
a lot more work to do.
Absolutely.
Until next time.
See you then.